Hello, dear viewers, friends, and all that. This is TVT, and welcome to the very first ARK Creature Feature. Today's episode will feature a personal favorite dinosaur of mine that conveniently starts with an A, the Allosaurus. For those of you that are new to this series, which is everyone, since this is the first episode I've done of it, this is where I'll be this is where we'll be talking about this creature's base stats, its abilities, where to find it, how to tame it, and ways you can use them to improve your experience in ARK Survival Ascended. I'll also be talking about my opinion on ARK's take of this creature and give it a final score based on all of these categories from 1 to 10. Remember, this Allosaurus is not the historical fossilized one that existed in real life over 100 million years ago. This is a species created and modeled after it. At best, it would be an artificial evolution of the original. So comparing the two apart from in-game abilities representing something the real-life creature had, or some particular iconic part of its appearance doesn't make much sense, so I'll avoid that. So basically, I'm not going to compare it based on the fact that it might be larger or smaller than the real-life version. If I do, it'll be to meme on it rather than to give it its actual score. Now, before we get any further, if you enjoy this video, go ahead and give this video a like. Be sure to comment and stomp that subscribe button to please the algorithm gods and spread this video across the platform. It helps out a lot, and I greatly appreciate the support. Alrighty, now that we've taken care of that, let's dive in. Allosaurus. The Allosaurus is one of those creatures that you should absolutely tame if you can find a good leveled one. They really are just that good, and that's reflected in their base stats. I say base stats with an emphasis because this is, when we're talking base stats, what we mean is that the creature is assuming the creature is level 1. And at level 1, the Allosaurus has base stats of 630 HP, 250 stamina, 150 oxygen, 3,000 food, and 380 weight, and 35 on its normal attack, and 25 on its roar attack for its melee damage. These two are reflective of the base damage that its attacks inflict. To go back up there, per wild level, it gains 126 HP, again, per each time it levels in the wild, plus 25 stamina, plus 15, because, into oxygen, because, that's so important on an Allo, right? Plus 300 food, plus 7.6 weight, and, plus 1.75/1.25 for the, normal and gore attacks, respectively, in melee. It's important to note that when we're talking numbers for melee here, what I'm referring to is the base damage of its attacks, not the percentage. All creatures at level 1 would have a melee of 100%, meaning that they will do, before taking armor and damage resistances into account, 100% of the damage listed on that attack, which is why I'm using those numbers. Because levels are assigned randomly based on difficulty level of the game, and stat points are assigned randomly. Okay, and when tamed, these values will get a small buff, and from there on, depending, an increase by percentage. So when tamed, the Allosaurus gets 5.4% with additive 0.07 HP. Percent, I believe, yes. Plus 10% stamina, plus 10% oxygen, plus 10% food, plus 4% weight, plus 1.7% with additive 7% and multiplicative 17.6% melee. Now, all of that might seem like a lot, and it is. And don't worry, I'm going to be flashing the stat boxes straight from the wiki page right here. So if you need to, please pause the video, take down some notes, whatever you have to do. And it's important to remember, we're just number crunching. You don't need to know all of the finer details of this. This is just to help you understand that when your guy puts out numbers on the screen, you know what those numbers are and what they mean. And on that note, because your creature will almost certainly not be a level 1, unless you're playing with the Hunted mod, I don't even know if that's out on ARK Survival Ascended yet. Or that it will even come to it. you won't be running into things that are level 1. You'll probably be running into them in the level 5 increment, because most of the time we play on difficulty 5 around these parts. So a max level wild allo will be much, much stronger. But all of those numbers will help you determine, if you don't have mods, all of the numbers that I've just listed here will help you determine what it's got its points put into. And that is important. But I would just install a mod like the awesome spyglass and whatever, just to save you some calculations, because holy moly, none of that. Okay, and now that we've sufficiently crunched those numbers, let's take a look at the abilities that make them matter. The Allosaurus has 4 abilities, and they are definitely showing its age as far as the creature list is concerned. Seriously, could we TLC this thing already? It really needs it. Well, not really, but enough. Anyway, 2 of these are attacks, and 1 is a passive roar that does nothing. Yay! Thankfully, the last one is a passive buff, and oh boy, is it good. Well, I say good, not great. Please note that, cat's blocking the monitor here. Hold on. Please note that that what I'm using here are base numbers for all of these attacks. So when you're seeing again, you've already said it, I'm saying it again. These numbers on the screen reflect a tame Allosaurus with random stat investment, i.e. wild. And once tamed, you're the one putting in the points. So that tells you just how powerful this thing will get at higher levels. But even at base, those are still some pretty good stats overall. The bite. The standard Allosaurus left-click simulator bite attack. You're like, right alongside like 99.5% of the creatures in this game, old and new. With its base melee stats at level 1, this attack from a wild Allosaurus will always do 35 damage, and it has a cooldown of 0.6 seconds. Again, it doesn't get more basic than that, but that doesn't make it bad. It is a solid attack. Remember that the damage scales with the melee stat, so taming a high-level 150 Allosaurus would yield a melee stat multiplier on that base damage that would be significantly more, and when you level it, will go up even more than that. Now on to the gore. A special bite attack using bite. It can only be performed by the Alpha Allosaurus in attack, meaning you need to have at least 1, preferably 2 more allied allos within a certain radius of the one you're using to make this work, and yours must be the highest level. You'll know if you're doing it right when your allo will have the orange-red mist around its head and neck like a raptor or direwolf. When this attack connects, this gore attack does 25 damage immediately, but it also inflicts the dreaded Nashed effect, causing the target to bleed out for 5% of its maximum HP over the course of 10 seconds. It also has movement speed. Very, very annoying when you're hit by it, but it's so brutal when it's done to someone else. While the initial impact scales with your melee stat, the bleed effect does not, and it does not stack with any other Nashed effects except for the one caused by Deinonychus. The bleed does not work on bosses, and the attack has a cooldown timer of 1.16 seconds. Believe me when I say do not, I repeat, do not underestimate a pack of allos. This gore attack by itself is enough to make them extremely deadly, even though only one of them can do it. Roar. This is a roar. You press C. It sounds cool, and it does absolutely nothing. Moving on. The Pack Boost. This is a passive buff similar to the Raptor or Direwolf's version. In a pack of 2 or more, the highest level Allosaurus receives the aforementioned orange misty glow and gets the following benefits. 50% damage increase and 25% damage reduction, turning an already pretty good creature into an absolute monster. Seriously though, this thing gets damage reduction and the Anki doesn't? Get out of here. It's one thing to play the game and see it in action, but putting a number to this just shows you how cracked it actually can be. A 50% damage buff on anything is absolutely disgusting. I'm sure by now, if you weren't already, you're intrigued and want one of these things for yourself. Stick around and I'll show you where to find one and how to tame them. The Allosaurus can be found across most of the island as an uncommon spawn, including some of the northern snowy regions. Some. However, it is most commonly encountered towards the center of the island, and Charlie. Towards the center of the island, in and around the volcano and adjacent mountains, where it will be found in packs of 2 to 3, prowling the plains and forests, or along the shores of the central river that flows through that region, where if they see you, they will immediately try and nibble your giblets. I've had the most luck in that more central area, and you can check your map and see coordinates for yourself. I'm not going to go into that because there's so many places where you can find this thing. But that's the general area where you should look. Okay. Taming one of these things is relatively straightforward. I say relatively because you will nearly always be dealing with more than one, and that can be a problem. There are 2 things I recommend. Number 1, bringing a strong creature that can take a hit or 2, such as a Rex or an RG. If you don't have those, a fast mount that can outrun the Allos and jump over gaps will do just fine. Just don't get stuck on anything. You'll be good. And I do recommend the RG because as a flyer, you have the most maneuverability while also being able to tank their damage, something most of the other flyers besides a Quetzal can't really do all that well. I recommend killing any Allos you don't want to tame in the pack before attempting to tame those you do want, or they will get in the way and drive you absolutely bonkers. It's kind of like Lydia blocking the door in Skyrim, but with more yelling and sharper teeth. Secondly, bring a standard 3x3 or 4x4 2-wall high box trap with a ramp. If you have more than one Allo in the pack that you're interested in, you might be able to squeeze them both into your box, especially if it's a 4x4. Do the usual thing of luring them in up the ramp and into the trap, although be advised with the improvements made to the ARK's wild AI, it's probably going to take you a couple times to nail it, because they will kind of try and go around obstacles instead of going in a straight line. Once you've managed to get them inside, break out that badass crossbow or long neck rifle and start pumping them full of arrows and darts. Because shooting something with a bolt, even one with narcotics on it, will knock them out and not kill them, right? Once you've sufficiently drugged your dinosaur, their prepared foods are superior kibble, or preferred, not prepared, sorry, are superior kibble, raw mutton, cooked lamb chop, and raw prime meat. I used prime meat here because that's what I had at the time. It's worth noting that if you use kibble, as with all times using kibble, it can be a higher tier than superior, and it will still work just as well. So if you want to use it, go for the extraordinary to cover all the bases, because honestly, you really don't need anything else if you can make that. Narcotics shouldn't be needed to keep it down, but that depends on your server settings. IMO, you should always bring some spare narcotic for knockout tames. Always. Better to have it and not need it than need it and not have it. Once you've tamed up your Allo, go ahead and slap a saddle on that bad boy or girl or whatever it identifies as. The saddle unlocks at level 67 and can be crafted in the smithy like most saddles. If you're planning on breeding it, don't level it up just yet unless you can track its base stat, or its tamed out stats via a mod, or if you wrote that down. But as for leveling, I'd recommend pumping health and melee almost exclusively. Maybe giving it some extra stamina won't hurt, but it won't need too much. Now that you've tamed a couple of these, you're good to go. And go, where are you going? We'll see. Now that you've tamed, perhaps bred, and maybe even made some mutated Allos, let's talk about what you use these things for. To be honest, it's easier to tell you what they can't do, because that list is pretty small. This creature, even without a TLC, is good. It's very good. Okay, let's put an asterisk on that. It's very good when it has the buff active, and obviously when it has numbers on its side. The smaller size, relatively smaller, because these things are still pretty damn big, means that they operate more efficiently as a group than a lot of other big carnivores. They're also pretty fast. They can run you down on a lot of things. And even if they can't run you down, they will out-stamina you down. Utilizing your Allos in combat means bringing the pack in and using them effectively to rack up that damage and apply that Nashed effect as often as possible when possible. Done correctly, you can shred through even the mighty Titanosaurus relatively easily. Even without Nash, the pack buff in a large group would apply to several individuals, and even without it, these things will still get work done due to their decent attack stat, their decent damage from their bite and the speed at which they can use it. They also can be effective against Gigas, unless the Giga hits you, in which case not so much. Honestly, I think the best usage for them, aside from anything else is probably alpha hunting and, of course, boss battles. Sure, y'all have seen plenty of times when these things have been brought into the boss arena and absolutely shred it. In any event, both bosses and alphas better be wary when a pack of mutated owls with good saddles rolls up. And honestly, at that point, you might as well stick the poor alpha into a wood chipper. Jesus. They'll guard your base, destroy your enemies, and be an absolute menace to society. There are even ways to use these creatures for caving, though without cryopods, you literally have to hatch an egg inside and raise the aloe raise the aloe up in there to clear it out, at which point you can't get it back out. Definitely not the most efficient way to deal with it, and I don't know why you would do that, but, you know, whatever works. I'll be real, I love this creature. Even though I think it needs a TLC, it is incredibly versatile and very dangerous. Definitely not a tame you want to overlook for any reason. In terms of aesthetics, I love the way it looks for the most part. It maintains that classic Allosaurus look that's in the real life creature, and even adds some like osteoderms and plates on it that actually give it a more like rugged, like ferocious look to it. And I will say the extra growth on the crests over the eyes is a little much, but it fits the ARK style, so I'm okay with it. Again, even without a TLC, this thing looks damn good, especially with its R and X versions. In terms of in-game utility, it's definitely a top-tier creature, easily going in my top 10. However, the fact that it only has three abilities that do anything and requires a full pack to reach its full potential, and then said full potential only applies to the pack leader, that does hold it back. For these reasons, the Allosaurus in ARK Survival Ascended and Evolved gets a score of 9 useless roars out of 10. I did struggle between an 8 and a 9, but I settled on the 9 because most of my criticisms here are relatively small and are nitpicky at best. It looks good, it feels good, and it does its job very well. But to get a 10, you need to have just a little bit more, I think. Now, if I were to TLC this creature, I'd replace the original left-click bite attack with a claw attack that has a bit more reach, but does the same amount of damage. Allow the Aloe's Roar to apply a buff of 10% damage and increase 15 resistance to the other pack members for 8 seconds with a cooldown of 45 seconds to a minute. This allows the Aloes to really get into that pack mentality without completely breaking the game. You have enough time to roar before combat, charge in, let everyone get the buff damage quickly while applying Nash before pulling back or continuing the assault with only the pack leader getting buffed by the original passive buff that he or she gets. So I wouldn't change all that much with it, is what I'm saying. Alrighty, I think that covers everything. I really hoped you liked this first ARK Creature feature showcasing the ferocious Allosaurus. If you enjoyed this video and found it useful, once again, do me a solid and hit that like button, comment, and subscribe, and please the algorithm god so that this video spreads across the platform. I really appreciate it, and it does help out a lot. But just as an aside, I will be going over modded creatures as well if I like the mod in question. I just wanted to get that out of the way, and this was the best place to do it. At any rate, this has been TBT. I'm signing out, and I'll catch you on the next episode of ARK Creature Feature.